it's Mia with Firewave Wellness, your digital platform for healing, vitality, and holistic health. I'm so excited you're here on the show and back with us, exploring what it means to do weight loss and detoxification in a holistic way. I have Dr. Pete Accord here today, and it's so amazing because he's really a cardiologist that gets it full circle, you guys. He understands what it means to not only be the amazing physician he is, healing lives, and honestly, repatterning the technology or what do we call it? The heartbeats, all of the electricity inside of our hearts. That's his specialty. He is that dedicated to all the fine details that are going on inside your body. But guess what? He's also a really, really amazing, undercover, plant-based, foodie. And so obviously I love plant-based food. And so that's why we're here today. We're going to talk any and everything, fruits, vegetables, all the goodness. So Dr. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mia. It's great to be here. I'm really excited.
I'm so excited. I want to ask, what's your favorite vegetable?
I probably have to say it's a tie between broccoli and mushrooms.
Nice. Yeah. I'm eating mushrooms literally almost every day. And so what's really great about just having more plants in our diet and what it means for weight loss and detoxification as well, right, is that plants are not only just that main source of food that literally is coming from the ground. And if you can take yourself back and think about when you were a caveman and we didn't have, Aldi and Walmart and all of these different aspects where there's just this abundance of options, whether they're actually natural food options where our physiology actually takes them and integrates it into our cells like mushrooms do, or they're just, plastic versions of a different kind, which we're going to talk about that too today. So there's so many different kinds of food items in the world. And so I brought Dr. Pete on here to really just kind of talk about why plant-based, foods are really, really just important for you when you're just living a life of vitality, right? When you don't want that fatigue, when you're tired of being stressed out, and how those options are really going to just fuel all the aspects of how it can be that you live in your passion, but also get the health results you want. So Dr. Pete, you've been doing the plant-based or plant primary, whatever we want to call it, lifestyle for a while. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've been doing this since 1996, so 24 years. And, for me, it was a natural process because I never liked meat, and I turned vegetarian at 17. I turned plant-based at 19, and I had a pretty special window into that world because I went to undergrad at Cornell University, and I had T. Colin Campbell of the China study as my college professor.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's an amazing human being, and he had already done research for 50 years before I even met him. And he's still, as you guys know, thriving in the world with fork over knives, which has totally taken off. But it's taken that long for the world to recognize. It's taken 20 years for the world to recognize really what the benefits of plant-based diets, not just for heart health, but overall health. And Dr. Campbell really focused his research on cancer. But we know from the World Health Organization and other huge studies that predominantly have come out of Harvard that really show, the benefits of a plant-based diet, especially if you focus on the Mediterranean aspect of it. But plant-based diet in general, the more plants you eat, the higher percentage of your diet that comes from plants, the better off you're going to be, period. And so for me, I had that window into the world, and I also had a love for cooking that I didn't discover until I became plant-based. And mostly it was because at the time you'd go to the supermarket, there weren't all these nut milks and, soy milks and almond milks and imitation cheeses and meats and things like that, stuff that just didn't exist. The only thing I could find in the supermarkets at the time, even at natural food markets, was soy milk. There was only one brand of soy milk out there. That was it. And that's the brand I still use if I'm going to use soy milk. So it
20 years later and you still have
incredible.
One kind, huh?
It's still the best because these guys were eating, Eden Foods has been out of Michigan. They've been around forever. And they're a grassroots company that really believed in pure foods. And I think if people out there don't get anything more out of this session, I would say, if you can't grow your food, then you shouldn't be eating it. That's a really simple, and an easy way to figure out what it is you should be eating. And if you can't grow it, you shouldn't be eating it. that will kind of give you a pretty strong base to come off of, if you're trying to increase the amounts of plant-based foods in your diet.
It's so, so true. And, I think that we have this overall theme of connecting to not only like our animal just being a part of nature, which is, I think, a really, really big priority for, just the people that I serve as well, because it's an energetic aspect as well. And when we're, believing that there is a life force in something, right? There's a life force in the zucchini. Like, if you can take yourself back and detach from all the external stimulus that technology and just our fast-paced lives can do, and really just recognize, like, I'm a natural being who could use natural fuel, like, you're the Porsche, like, give yourself 91, like like those are those aspects of it. And so, you mentioned that when you started, that was kind of where the cooking shifted for you.
Yeah.
And I'm big on, like, if you are brand new to weight loss and detoxification, like, a kitchen cleanup is usually a good place to start, because you've got to kind of know where your landscape's at and then make it, like, accessible to you to cook and to do those aspects, instead of it being this overall burden where people are like, well, I don't know, and I still have 7 packs of Oreos everywhere, so no wonder I can't stop eating Oreos, or things like that, right? Can you talk a little bit about cooking and like those parts of it, if you can take yourself back?
Yeah, so I think, for me, you can't miss the forest for the trees. So life has to be big picture, right? And if you look at other mammals, other animals on the planet, they spend pretty much all their day either resting or eating. And that's where they focus all of their energy. And the way we evolved as human beings is because our brains evolved, we were able to dedicate less and less time to garnering food and eating, and more time to doing other things. And that's why we are where we are now, but it's a double-edged sword. It's why we have obesity and diabetes and heart disease and stroke. It's because we pay much less attention than we should be on what we're putting into our bodies. But if you look at other animals, that's all they do. All they do is pay attention to what they're putting into their bodies, right? If you look at nature and wild animals. And so that's where I think we have to take a step back and say, whoa, what are we really doing in this life? Are we focusing enough and giving enough time and energy to the foods that we put into our bodies, or are we really being self-destructive? And I think the pendulum is starting to tip, luckily, the other way, where we're saying, hey, we've been doing things wrong for a long time following industrialization, and we need to really start focusing on the food aspect of our lives. That should be a much bigger chunk of our time and energy and focus than what it has been for generations past. And so I think that's really the key to re-energizing and refocusing our lives to a healthier aspect of cooking and eating. And so what I tell people is, it's a huge life change. It's a lifestyle change. This is not a diet. It's not a fad. You really have to change your life. And if you're not willing to dedicate the time and energy, and to some extent money, although organic foods are getting easier and cheaper to buy, then it's going to be difficult. And so I think you really need to start with changing the big picture of where your life is heading. And the earlier on you do it in your life, the better off you're going to be down the road. We see a ton of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even dying of heart attacks because they haven't taken care of themselves. And those people some of them aren't even smokers, but they also don't know their genetics. And so, the other aspect of this, and we can get to it later, is the field of genetics, and really focusing on where our foods take us through gene expression. Yeah. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But I think in terms of cooking and eating, you really have to, even if you don't love cooking, you can make simple foods. Cooking doesn't have to be that difficult. But if you start with the best ingredients you can find, your food is going to be that much better, that much more delicious, and that much more nutritious.
Yeah. And an example of just kind of what you're saying. So my health journey started probably like 8 years ago. If I really, really thought about, like, oh, I'm deciding to cook my meals, and I'm deciding, if I want to go and buy into a meal prep service. And honestly, it kind of came out of, like, my yoga practice felt really good, and I wanted to go do handstands and all the amazing things. And there was a little bit of that ethics side of it too. And just what it means for our planet to have sustainable options and why plants just do that. And there's a lot of information out there that not only like having the majority of what you're consuming be something that is easier on the planet, but then also easier on your digestion. And that's my whole thing is like, I'm all about you having pleasure inside of meals, but like why miss out on all of the micronutrients? Why miss out on all of those aspects that like the universe or God or whoever you want to talk about, like divinely put in, like, you know, the skin of a zucchini or those little black parts of a mushroom that like your body responds to, and like how magical is that, and how we haven't, you know, we've started to recreate it in a technical science Western side, but it's also at the end of the day, I do think that, like you said, if it grows in the ground, like we've got something there, because, you know, we come from, you know, the dirt and that aspect of being on this planet too. For a lot of people that are maybe new and like exploring, you know, what weight loss could look like there for them, what detoxification could look like for them, which is like what you were saying, kind of shifting away from the standard American diet where there is processed foods and where we're fastly grabbing for things that, you know, have been made specifically for convenience and also to make you buy it again with all of these just enhancers. I'm gonna leave it at that. That just let your brain like feel amazing on certain things, and it is an unwinding process. It is a slowing down, because like you said, to change a lifestyle, I mean, it really starts at changing your taste buds and breaking up with yourself day after day that you're the kind of person that's not going to emotionally give into, you know, having the disciplined routine and saying, you know, my investment in my health, whether that's me spending an extra dollar on an organic version of something, or it's an investment in my health that I'm now spending time, right? I'm spending time getting myself to get outdoors. I'm spending time giving up something that I've done for a long time, and it's a reward for me, and I have to now switch my rewards. Like, I want you all to know, like, audience, like, you guys are on, like, we're on your team. Like, I built this show so that these, you know, all of my speakers and us, we can support you, because we've all been there in a certain version, and we've figured out what those results are for ourselves. And I can tell you now that, like, from living from the inside out, like that fueling that I now do, I can push myself to be more productive when I need to, or I can roll it back and have those times of rest and not have this emotional like conflict in myself. Like, I know that I am connected to nature and I am an animal that can take rest, and that's part of the rhythm that modern society has challenged us kind of. And so, you know, talking about modern society, Dr. Pete, I want to talk about, you know, I'm big in yoga, so that's like the Eastern version of things. And I don't want to reinforce a dichotomy of East and West. I think that there is a holistic approach to it and understanding. And as, you know, you as a cardiologist and being in, you know, situations where there's not as much incense around, I don't know, like, you know, like, kind of talk to me about what you've seen and being, you know, just who you are as your own, you know, unique soul, and learning that the plants did fuel, you know, you to self-express, you know, freely and powerfully in this world, regardless of, you know, who you're serving or what context you serve under.
Yeah, so I think you have to know your audience, right? And so for me, you know, people have for years been asking me, well, why aren't you trying to convert me into being a vegan or, you know, eating a plant-based diet? And I tell them, well, you know, you have to be ready and open to do it. I was ready and open years ago. For me, it was easy. It was the right thing to do. I knew it intuitively, and I knew the science behind it. I'd studied the science. So I knew that that was the right thing for me, and eventually it'd be the right thing for the planet. And so, you know, I think changes, like you said, have to come about slowly. You can't just jump into it, you know, and kind of like quitting cold turkey from smoking or something like that. It might not hold, right? You're going to start up getting back into your bad habits down the road. These changes have to come slowly, but you have to be ready and willing to do it. And oftentimes it takes a crisis, like a heart attack or a stroke, to get people to change. But at the same time, it doesn't just change them, it changes their families, right? And sometimes it takes a child or you know, a younger family member to bring the family to become enlightened by what really is harming their lives, what is what it's going to take to really make big lifestyle changes. But I come back to, hey, you really have to take a bigger picture perspective of where your life is and where we exist as a footprint on this planet. We're a small presence on this planet as far as the size of the planet goes, but we're making a huge impact. And food is the same way. We don't always pay that much attention to it because we're too busy with our lives. We're too busy running around chasing our kids, driving to and from work, being stuck in traffic, and just getting into the habit of doing things for because they're convenient and because we don't have the time and make the time to instill those positive changes in our lives. And so I think you have to do the things that work for you. Just because being plant-based for me, works, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you or everybody else. But I think you should make the majority of your food come from plants. And if we lessened our impact in terms of meat eating on the planet, we would more than anything help the planet in terms of greenhouse gases. Right? That's the biggest impact. I tell people, if you want to call yourself an environmentalist or somebody who really believes in global warming and want to make a huge impact, the first thing you should do is stop eating meat, or at least eat less of it. Because amounts do matter. And the more you expose the insides of your body to the external environment, which is really food, the more you're exposing yourself to negative things from the environment, the greater impact it's going to have on your insides. So you have to think about it. If you think about it from a biological perspective, your alimentary tract, your esophagus, your mouth, your intestines, those are all really the outside world. It's a really long tunnel, right? But it's got the surface of a tennis court that you're exposing to food, and the toxins, the nutrients, the vitamins, minerals from food on a regular basis. It's a huge exposure on it. I mean, think of the surface of a tennis court on the inside of your body that's being exposed to the environment. Open that up and think about, whoa, that's a really huge deal. It's a really big deal. And that's how you have to see it. That is the outside world, your body being exposed to the outside world. And on a actually constant basis, not even daily, it's constant. There's always food and being digested through your body on a regular basis, and that exposure is exposure to the outside world. So you really have to think about what is it that I'm exposing my body to when I'm putting food in my mouth.
Yeah, and that's why the healing aspects of it are so important, everybody. And that if you were in a pattern where that tennis court worth of area, like, can you just imagine if we paused this right now and we all tried to like roll our bodies from one end of a tennis court to another? Like, that's all inside your guts. And guess what? All your guts are like inside your, like, you could look down and it's all right there. Isn't that just blows my mind. So thank you for that visual. Yeah. But like, we forget that like if we have so much absorptive power, let's simplify it to that extent, right? And are having toxicity, if it's a pie puzzle and most of us are in this toxic state, it takes a toxic unloading in the beginning. It takes hey, let's go back to basics. Like, yes, I'm so proud of you for eating, 1 to 2 salads a week, but where was it? Like, was it a leaf that you cut? Like, there's different aspects. We forget about that. And so there's hope in, if you're in the Wendy's drive-thru and you're choosing one versus, a thing versus a salad, like, that's a level, right? But then there also is that other level, and it is, how can you deeply impact and prioritize what gut health means to you, and know actually that there is, and trust us that there's a lot of research that's actually connecting into a lot of the low energy you're having, or self, limiting thoughts that you have, and how you can start to express more vitality once we begin that healing process and saying, like, let's bring people out of toxic overload.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people, I talk to my coworkers all the time who aren't physicians, and even physicians, and they're constantly asking me for nutrition advice. And I tell them, if you really want to make that big change, you have to give yourself a minimum of 3 months to adapt, and your body to adapt. You've been literally using your body for years and your entire life. If you really haven't been focusing on the nutrition aspect of your life and what you're putting into your body, it's gonna, it took you that long to get to this point. It's not going to happen overnight where your body detoxifies and heals itself. It's going to be it's going to start at 3 months. It's going to be slow up to 3 months. And then after that, it's going to take you sustaining it. And you're going to notice huge changes. And people who have never been plant-based, if they're obese, they will see a dramatic drop in their weight, because you can't possibly eat that many plants and take in that many calories unless you're deep frying everything, which people aren't going to be doing. And so, it's an amazing way to get to a healthy weight if that's your goal, and an amazing way, an easy way to sustain it.
And from my personal experience, even a lot of the weight that I thought I had to lose was an inflammatory response as well. So I was just like puffy, and I was just like, I looked inflated, And so those aspects of like eating plant-based, like those are small wins that you do get in the process. Like, yes, healing your gut does take that extensive time, but it's amazing. Like I watch people and I'm like, it's been like 2 weeks, what changed, Yeah. And it's in their face, and it's in just how, and those things which we talk about in other interviews are like, that's the energetic side. That's the non-physical body side. That's the, like, you being able to self-express more freely and understand your spirituality and connectedness, because you are doing the work, and you get to give yourself that credit too. So, Dr. Pete, I want to kind of talk food. I know we said, I now know that you love mushrooms, but kind of what are those top things that are on the forefront of your mind if somebody was, brand spanking new, they were open to, choosing more organic, they were open to, substituting things, instead of their carne asada tacos, things like that. Like, what can you tell us about the food itself? What can you maybe explain? I would love to kind of talk about phytonutrients if you have a little bit of that, because I just think that's the magical side of plant-based, and kind of just open people's minds a little bit if they haven't experienced that, and hear it from a doc.
Yeah. So, what we know now that we didn't know from a heart disease perspective is that it's actually an inflammatory process. 25 years ago, when I was in college, we thought all the literature is saying, hey, it's high cholesterol, you got to get your cholesterol down, you got to get your LDL down, which is your bad cholesterol, get your HDL up, which is your good cholesterol. And that just didn't pan out. What we discovered eventually is that it's an inflammatory process. The heart disease is an inflammatory process. And what you need to do is you need to cool it down. And that's why statins have been such a, they've really changed the life expectancy across the globe. One of the main reasons that people are living longer is because of statins, treating cholesterol, but they have what we call pleiotropic effects. And those pleiotropic effects are kind of unknown effects that we think and that we believe are anti-inflammatory. And so, the best anti-inflammatory you can do is not Advil. It's not taking some over-the-counter or even taking a statin. It's your diet. It's your food. And coming back to phytonutrients, one of the greatest benefits of plant-based foods is that they're a high antioxidant food. Those are the phytonutrients, are the things that really confiscate free radicals within your bloodstream and reduce the amount of inflammation in your bloodstream, keep those arteries clean and free of plaque. It's damage to the arteries from having high blood pressure, being obese, not exercising, having a sedentary, stressful lifestyle that cause damage to the arteries, which in turn, you have high free radicals running through your blood, which leads to cholesterol deposition. But the process really starts with inflammation. And so really, you want to reduce the amount of how your body is inflamed, right?
Yeah.
And the best way to cool it down and keep it glowing is by taking in as much phytonutrients as possible. And we know that a plant-based diet is the anti-inflammatory diet. It's the high oxidant diet. So there are different ways, right? There are different ways to gain your nutrients. If you eat raw, that's amazing. I think eating raw is really difficult, other than juicing. And so, there are different things that it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it is. What we know is that people eat the same 10 meals over and over again, whether they're vegetarian meals or meat meals, right? And so you have to make it easy. And so what I tell people is, the first thing you think about is your freezer is your best friend. If you have a freezer to get leftovers, and then leftovers in your freezer are your best friend. So when I cook, I tend to cook bigger portions for leftovers during the week. And if we don't get to it, so the food doesn't spoil, I freeze it. And that way you have food available when you want it, healthy food, and does the food have as much antioxidant properties when it's frozen? I don't know. Probably it does. Probably it's still along those lines. But, if you cook, bigger portions of your meals with the idea that you're going to have those leftovers for lunch or dinner the next night, you're not going to get bored with having the same dinner twice a week or 3 times a week. It's you cook some of your favorite meals, and you're not going to really have more than 10 meals that you cook on a regular basis. Then it gets, a really big challenge becomes much more doable and easier. And so that's what I do with our family, and especially with a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old. It makes it easy. There's food for him all the time, right? And we vary it up. So, and he has his favorite foods that we make. The other ways to think about food that makes it easy and what we do is juicing. And I think, juicing, the main gripe I had with juicing for years is that you're eliminating the fiber content from food, right? You really don't want to do that. And so one of the ways you can get away from that is by blending a whole food, whole vegetables and drinking that. That is not as palatable. So I have a juicer that I use that maintains a lot of the fiber content, and it's plenty of fiber, trust me. Juicing for the week, right? Go to the farmer's market, buy the stuff that you want, have very small amounts of, high sugar foods like orange juice or apple, just a little bit to balance it and make it palatable. Have plenty of citrus in there that's not calorie dense, like lemon or lime, to not only help preserve those antioxidant properties from the greens that you're putting in there, but also balance out the flavor. And so when you're doing those simple things, doing that at the beginning of the week, like we're going to go to the market tomorrow and we're going to juice later in the day, and we're going to have that juice the rest of the week, and it'll last the week without spoiling. And you're going to have, you're going to have breakfast, you can have lunch, or at least part of your lunch with a high fiber content to take for that week. And one of the things that we haven't talked about really yet is prebiotics and fiber and your gut genome, right? The microbiome, which is a huge area of research right now, especially here in UCSD. And the American Gut Project is actually being spearheaded by a scientist here at UCSD. So he's got gut samples coming from all over the world.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm so glad that we're getting there, because as somebody who, for myself, had to figure out what my enteric system, my digestion, what my esophagus, all the slime that makes a digestive system, a digestive system, I had to figure that out myself. Now that we're doing this research and people can say, like, because we know you're bio-individual, we know every person's unique. And so we've got to look at what those patterns are so we can give you all the right information, from a research scientific aspect.
I think that's correct. And so, the reason why our microbiome is so messed up is because we're eating all the wrong stuff, right? These things they call prebiotics, you see it all over the place. That's just fiber. It's plant fiber. That's all it is. Animal foods don't have any fiber. There's no fiber in animal foods, eggs, dairy, meat. There's no fiber in that stuff. Prebiotics are fiber, and they serve so many beneficial roles, right? Fiber fills you so that you're not eating as much, so you can eat higher amounts of food that are not as dense, and so you're not overeating in terms of calories and becoming obese from the food that you're eating. It holds on to certain fats. It holds on to water to keep your gut moving. And so a big thing that people don't talk about is constipation, right? I have irritable bowel syndrome. How many people do you know have irritable bowel syndrome? Well, that can be completely fixed by eating enough fiber in your diet. We don't, we eat, average American, I think, eats, somewhere around 15 to 20 or 30 grams of fiber per day. We should be eating way more than 50. We should be eating 50 to 100 and more, closer to 80 or 90 grams of fiber per day. We don't even get close to it on the American diet, not even close. And the only way to do that is through a plant-based diet, a diet that's rich in plant-based foods. And one of the ways, if you want to bulk up, and there's a huge focus on protein in this world. If you're somebody who likes to work out and be really muscly, right, you can still get all your calories from plant-based sources, predominantly from plant-based sources. And if you're doing shakes, a lot of shakes don't actually have fiber. They have a high protein content, but you can add. I have a prebiotic that I add to my protein shakes when I do that. But that's another way to have a meal that's rich in micronutrients and also rich in fiber, that's palatable and is really good for you. And it's really taking it in it's a very concentrated form, right? It's a little bit of protein shakes, a little bit of a reductive diet. But if you're getting them from the right source, you're still kind of focusing on, hey, this is the best macronutrient source that I can put into my body.
Yeah, and these are such great, just easy applications to beginning that lifestyle, right? I agree. I was actually just talking to someone earlier this week, and she was like, I'm feeling wonky, like I'm not used to having this pudge. What has going on, Mia? Like, she just had a super stressful, like, 3 weeks and moved and did all this. So she's in fight or flight and her responses are through the roof, and I can only imagine cortisol, things like that.
Cortisol,
and where you start, as I start with psyllium husk. And I'm like, if you're stressing yourself out and you're not like going, I'm just going to claim it. We've already talked about poop multiple times on the show. So, like if you're not pooping,
it's
like
a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
Important. And so, getting that fiber and then getting, the prebiotic, which is the fiber to feed the good bacteria so that the good bacteria can do its job, and then go supplement with probiotics for a week and come back to me and ask, like, A, do I have my sanity back? Because watch it happen. And B, like, okay, cool, I've kind of hit the reset button if I needed to. And, and even though I, cried for 5 days and ate a lot of pizza, like we're resilient, right? Like that's the point. And that's what's really important is that the body's always working for us, but like, we've got to get out of like trying to like tear it down all the time, and like give yourself a break and let your digestive itself relax and like feel good about that. I want to leave on what we talked about in the very, very beginning, which is epigenetics or genetics or just gene expression, which is a big rabbit hole. And I want to just leave it in a very sense that I want to oversimplify it. And I want to say for any newbies that are doing weight loss and detoxification, that you're the product of your surroundings. And you've probably noticed that when you were in 2nd grade and you had the class clown next to you, and you guys used to get in trouble because the class clown was next to you, or there was some aspect, right? And that's a very, very elementary version of it. But that happens inside of our health and wellness too, right? Like if we're with people that are suddenly saying, I want to go do the yoga boot camp for a month, or I want to be, in the luncheon group that's, going to the office and we all go to Mexican food on Thursdays, like those patterns of your lifestyle are also affecting your health. And that's also where energetically you get to say, I am going to make an investment in my health and I am going to understand those things. But what's really cool and what I want Dr. P to talk about is that like those components, when you are making those lifestyle changes like that, like I just mentioned with situations or with food choices, that actually your body is like because your cells are always changing and evolving and metabolic pathways are always working for you, that those, once you make these changes, like we talked about with fiber, prebiotics, just considering less animal products and starting there, that we actually begin to kind of change on a cellular level and like a DNA level.
Yeah, that's right. So, we're all no two people are built the same, right? Even twins oftentimes don't have the same they don't die from the same diseases, right? They don't have the same life expectancy. So what we know is that our environment affects who we are through our genes. And so what our body is exposed to can affect, which genes are expressed. And that's what Dr. Campbell's, a lot of his work was about. And we're learning more and more about that through epigenetics. And so the route that medicine is going, it's all going to be tailored. We're going to be able to test our genetics and see, fine tune our macronutrient intake and more so fine tune our micronutrient intake. But it's not really going to change the big picture for us, which is we know the foods that are good for us. We know what works for us as human beings, knowing our digestive systems and our anatomy, that we benefit from eating a predominantly plant-based diet. There's no question about that. And those plant-based foods, specifically fiber, but also proteins that are found in plant-based foods, help to maximize our gene expression in the best way possible. Now, that might not be true for everybody, but it's true for most human beings. And that's what we know right now. Now that will probably change to some extent as time goes on and we learn more about epigenetics and our gene expression. But I don't think it's going to change that much. Knowing what I know, excuse me, the nutrition research that has been done for the last 70 years. Nutrition has only been around 70 years. It's only been around since the late 40s. And so it's a really, really new field of science. I wouldn't call it medicine because medicine doesn't really focus on nutrition, which is probably the biggest setback to allopathic medicine, right? I mean, think about it. So I do it because that's a passion of mine and I studied it, but most doctors don't know what to recommend. Even, a lot of gastrointestinal doctors who people go to see for IBS, and they recommend just eating fiber and sometimes don't even do that. They make the wrong recommendations because they don't have a strong understanding of nutrition. That's shifting. I know that from gastroenterologists that I know, that the world of gastroenterology is actually moving towards eating a higher fiber, higher plant-based diet. But it is at the basic level, we all are pretty much the same animal, and we're going to have similar gene expression from the foods that we eat on a general basis. Are there certain foods that are not going to be right for you or good for you? Sure. Or some of them going to be plant-based? Sure. The majority of them going to be, animal-based? I don't know, maybe. But, go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's such a life hack to me, right? Like, if you now knowing this information, I hope you can think through like, wow, I can hack like whatever version of weight loss, detoxification, or just healthy living. Like, that's the biohack, you guys, is that there's this whole list of ingredients that a zucchini won't have on it that you want, and it will boost you and it will empower so many different aspects of that, and you're going to get results faster because of that. And that's my whole thing, is like, you're already convinced that living fast is great, and I totally want to get like, okay, that's great, I'm not going to like evolve that for you, but I'm going to say like, then let's be the most effective and let's be the most efficient. And being plant-based does that. And that doesn't mean that you don't have a delicious piece of salmon or your favorite ahi tuna roll, like, or you don't, live your life and live inside of your heritage and culture, which I respect too. Like, as a Filipina, like, I need to write a cookbook because it's just a different world,
I'm looking forward to that.
It's also important, and all of those different kind of, we're learning it too, you guys. So like, we're in the kitchen, we're standing there in with our saute pans, and we're saying, like, oh, what does it feel like, and what new spices can I add so that the same red pepper with zucchinis and garlic cloves, like those basic ingredient lists that then become these wholesome meals. You can have flavor, you can have amazingness. Like, Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about that a lot. He's like, I almost like it better sometimes because of how I've learned how to season things and all of these herbs and things that I found in the world. And that's a lot of what I do, is like, there's adaptogens and just these amazing plant things that are taking people on multiple levels, and really saying like, rounding out their well-being and having them overcome trauma and having them overcome high stress states. And food can do that. So Dr. Pete's had an amazing thing and gift for you guys. He's going to give you some of his top and favorite ways to cook. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Dr. Pete?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges to people eating plant-based is, what do I make and how do I get enough protein in my diet? So I'm gonna share with you guys a few easy recipes that can potentially even get you through the week, that you're gonna absolutely fall in love with, I think. And it's a good stepping stone to getting you started on your route to changing your body, changing your microbiome, and potentially changing the way your genes affect who you are. You don't have to live necessarily with your genes. We can't change them yet. We will in our lifetimes be able to change our genes, but it might not happen to the extent that we want it. That is still going to pan out. But my dad had bypass surgery at 35. I'm 43, and I have the same. I have half his genes, but I don't have what happened to him. And that's because I've been affecting my gene expression for, 24 years. But I think, one of the easiest way to get started is by at least experimenting and seeing, hey, this doesn't have to be this hard, and it can still be delicious and amazing with simple ingredients that can get you through a week's worth of food and eating in the way that your body really wants you to eat.
Yeah, and just having a healthy sense of curiosity about it all, right? And exploring those things, making it easy for yourself. We always talk about that with habits, right? Is that it's got to be obvious, and it's got to be just like something that you can integrate right away, like, I sleep in my workout clothes, like things like that. And at the same token, like, also making certain things like out of your consciousness. So if there are those things that, you've listened to this and you're like, oh wow, that is, hurting my heart health. Oh, wow, that is, stealing away my joy in expressing and putting me in higher stress states. Then like, I want you to like get rid of it, or like get rid of your relationship with it, if anything, like, and shift your relationship and say like, oh, I won't give that so much power in my mindscape. And I am curious and I am open, and it won't be as stressful for me to go get stuff in a pan. Go get a bunch of vegetables in a pan. Start there. Use, Dr. Pete's recipes, and then explore it and have fun with it, and know that like all of the resources we give you and the links and how you interact with us, like this is our jam. Like this is why we're on this planet. So we want to play, in that with you and just help you. And so Dr. Pete, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mia. It's been great.
All right, everyone go get his recipes and we'll have lunch together or something.